Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Wolfenstein Youngblood. I played it on the Xbox One. It's also available on the PC, PS4, and Nintendo Switch. So let's start with the story. You play as either Soph or Jess, the daughters of BJ Blazkowicz and Anya, and basically BJ goes missing, and they're not going to sit back and just wait to see what happens. They go to Paris, which is still under Nazi control, I might add, and, well, they go to war with the Nazis with the help of the French resistance. This is a very short story. The game itself is very short, and I gotta say, the one twist that happened in the game didn't shock me. Saw it coming miles away. It was horribly broadcast. Like, overall, the story of Youngblood just doesn't really live up to what they've done with the previous Wolfenstein games, or at least since this recent reboot. I will say I did like Jess and Soph. I like their attitudes. I like the way that the developers made them feel like sisters. They made them feel like real human beings, and they did a good job with making them siblings. There are a lot of games out there where there are characters that are supposed to be siblings, and you're just kind of sitting there going like, they really don't seem like they've ever lived together or even know each other. So I will say that they did a good job with that, but the rest of the story is just meh. On to the audio. Honestly, the audio is very well done in this game. I think the voice acting is well done. I really do think they've done a good job with that since rebooting this franchise, making sure that everybody sounds legitimate like human beings. I also like the music in this game. I think they did a really good job with that. It does add drama and gravitas to the situations. And of course, you've got the sound effects, which are wonderful in this game. They're really good. They really bring you into the world. When you're firing a big meaty gun, it sounds like a big meaty gun. Okay, so let's get into the gameplay. This is once again a first-person shooter, and it's much more reminiscent of Wolfenstein 2 than Wolfenstein: A New Order. And I point that out because I didn't love Wolfenstein 2's gameplay quite as much as I liked A New Order's. I felt that A New Order gave you a good variety of ways to do things. You could go in and be super sneaky if you wanted to, or you could try and just go guns blazing, and both would work. New Colossus as well as Youngblood, you can try and sneak, but it generally devolves very quickly into just a gunfight. Which isn't entirely a bad thing, because all those mechanics work very well in this game. The shooting is excellent, the variety of weapons is really cool, the variety of abilities that you can get is really cool. One thing I really love that they put into this game is you can really customize your weapons. Each weapon has a variety of options, from optics, muzzle, magazines, etc. And then even within those, you have 3 options, so you can really customize each and every one of your guns to how you want it to work best for you. So I loved that element, but unfortunately, overall, it's a pretty small game, and it gets fairly repetitive fairly quickly. They tried to expand on it and make it more open world with more side quests and less of a linear experience, but it didn't add much to what was there. Honestly, I feel like a more linear shooter nowadays would be kind of nice and refreshing and a little bit more unique, since everything's trying to be pseudo open world. But I'm gonna put some major complaints in this section, like the fact that because it is meant to be a co-op game, you can play solo, but you can't pause if you're playing solo. And while it was fun playing with a buddy, it didn't add that much to the game, but losing the ability to pause while playing solo really gets annoying. Not being able to pause or enter any menus without the game continuing around you doesn't help. It gets really frustrating, honestly. It also means that you can't just shut down your Xbox, put it to sleep, and then pick up where you left off, even if you were playing solo. That worked for me once. Now we're going to get into my biggest complaint with this game, and that was the checkpoint in this game. The first time I ran into any real problems with the checkpoint was there was a boss that I wasn't really prepared for. I got kind of screwed on, and I burnt through my shared lives, died completely, and it restarted me, not from the boss fight, but from the very beginning of that entire mission. It was about 30 to 40 minutes of gameplay that I lost there. So, not so surprisingly, I found that incredibly frustrating. But then, later in the game, at the end of the game, the checkpoints fucked me even worse. Similar situation, but when I lost to the final boss, it checkpointed me at the beginning of the final boss fight. That sounds not so bad, like a checkpoint should work, except for all the ammo that I expended in my previous attempt was gone. It didn't come back. The shared lives that I lost, all gone. Didn't get those back. So I was going into a boss fight with practically no ammo, no shared lives. It was a huge pain in the ass. I had to completely re-strategize. It took me way more attempts than it should have. Because the problem is, the first go at the boss fight, you gotta kind of figure out what you need to do to win. So dying that first time wasn't so bad. Dying all the subsequent times because I was being restarted with no ammo, no lives, that was unacceptable, and it became incredibly infuriating. I did beat the final boss, but it wasn't really worth it at the end. That's a really poor design choice there that they made, and I don't know how that slipped past and was okayed. It was just bullshit. To put it simply, the checkpoints in this game fuck with the game in a way that makes it unenjoyable. And the last thing I will put into the gameplay mechanics section is that the minimap really needs some better waypoints. Figuring out where you need to go at times can be really frustrating. As for the controls, I think the controls worked very well. I mean, I have no complaints with that. This game comes from a great pedigree, so the shooting is excellent, the movement is excellent. Just all of that is really well done. Anything involving the controls in this game, I felt was really well done. Lastly, the graphics. I think it's a good-looking game, but for some reason I felt like it didn't look quite as good as the previous entry, which that's always ridiculous when that happens. I did like, obviously, the design of the world. I really enjoyed the way they did their characters, because they introduced new characters, and I like the way they look. They fit into the world, but I just feel like it doesn't look quite as good as the previous entry, and considering it's a sequel, that's kind of weird. So to wrap this up, I know it's a cheap game, it's like $30, but quite frankly, I don't think it's worth it. The story didn't really stand out, and it really didn't live up to what the previous games had done from a story standpoint. But not only that, the gameplay itself is not as good as in the previous games. It felt like this just kind of existed in order to be a bridge to the next game. And if it is just a bridge to the next game, then go look up a video that explains the story of it. Because quite frankly, I didn't find it worth playing. So yeah, it's a skip. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me which is your favorite Wolfenstein game? I may have asked that already. I don't know. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.